Hi, I'm Tom Dalton. If you are wondering how to allocate recourse liabilities to partners at the end of the year, you've come to the right place. In this video, I'll show you how the Treasury regulations require recourse liabilities to be allocated so that a partner can correctly calculate his or her tax basis in a partnership. Let's dive right in. First, let's take a quick review of why we care. A partner's tax basis in a partnership interest is the sum of two things. First, it includes the tax basis of a partner's net capital invested in the partnership. In many cases, this is equal to the partner's tax basis capital account on the balance sheet, but not always. This net capital invested increases when cash or property is contributed to a partnership, decreases when cash or property is distributed from a partnership. It increases with a partner's share of profits, and it decreases with a partner's share of losses. Second, we will add to the net capital the partner's share of partnership liabilities at a particular moment in time. Typically, this is at the end of the year. It's the partner's share of partnership liabilities that we are talking about in this video. There are two types of liabilities. First, there are recourse liabilities, and second, there are non-recourse liabilities. Recourse liabilities are liabilities that the lender can collect by going after the personal assets of the borrower. For example, if a borrower takes out a recourse mortgage in order to purchase land, but then is unable to repay the debt, the lender can repossess and sell the land to collect on the loan. If there are not enough funds from the repossession to pay the entire loan, then the lender can go after the borrower for the rest of the amount owed. If the borrower defaults on a non-recourse loan, the lender can only collect by repossessing any property secured by the loan. If the repossession does not produce enough money to repay the loan, the lender cannot go after the borrower, and the borrower can simply walk away. Recourse and non-recourse liabilities are allocated to a partner by different methods. In this video, we are only demonstrating how recourse liabilities are allocated. In this example, there are three partners. The first two are general partners, and the third is a limited partner. Only general partners are allocated recourse liabilities, not limited partners. LLC members are also not allocated recourse liabilities. The exception to this is when a limited partner or an LLC member personally guarantees a recourse debt. The personal guarantee on the debt makes the limited partner or the LLC member responsible for the recourse liability. In our example, the general partners have a 40% profit sharing ratio, while the limited partner has only a 20% profit sharing ratio. The general partners have a 25% loss sharing ratio, while the limited partner has a 50% loss sharing ratio. The partnership recourse liabilities are $60,000. Treasury Regulation 1.752-1 states that a recourse liability is a liability that exposes the partner to economic risk. Treasury Regulation 1.752-2 further states that a partner has a share of recourse liabilities to the extent of the partner's economic risk for the recourse liability. The idea of economic risk is key to the allocation. Years ago, it was enough to simply multiply a partner's loss-sharing ratio by the amount of recourse liabilities to determine the partner's share of recourse liabilities. Eventually, though, the Treasury decided that this method was not accurate. Now, we need to estimate how much of a recourse liability that a partner potentially must pay if everything goes wrong in the partnership in order for the partnership to repay the liability. We can't really know what that amount is until it happens and the legal process is complete. Typically, the judge will make a final call on who owes what in a recourse liability. But the Treasury regulations force us to make an educated guess, and they tell us how to make that guess. Since this entire theory is based on the idea of economic risk, the calculation is based on fair market value balance sheets so that we are measuring economic risk. This means that to allocate recourse liabilities correctly, there must be a fair market value or economic balance sheet to work with. In practice, most partnerships do not keep a day-to-day fair market value set of books. Instead, they create a fair market value balance sheet when needed. Allocating recourse liabilities to partners at the end of the year is one of those times. A tax basis balance sheet is typically different than a fair market value balance sheet. Here, we can see the same partnership with a tax basis balance sheet. Notice that the land is stated at tax basis instead of fair market value. Also notice that the partners' capital accounts are stated at tax basis rather than fair market value. This is not the balance sheet to use when allocating recourse liabilities. Under the regulations, using a fair market value balance sheet, we pretend that we are in an alternate universe, and we pretend that things go terribly wrong in the partnership and all of the assets disappear. This is called the constructive liquidation scenario. We hope that that never happens, but for these purposes, we pretend that it does. In this example, we have cash and land with a total of $130,000 fair market value. Pretend that the cash and land go up in smoke and disappear completely. This creates a fair market value economic loss of $130,000. And if we were to create a fair market value journal entry, it would look like this. Next, we would allocate the loss to the partner's fair market value capital accounts. Be careful here, though. The substantial economic effect rules of IRC Section 704B influence how this loss allocation is made. I'll make another video to explain how substantial economic effect works. But for now, it's enough to know that the limited partner can only be allocated economic losses to the extent of the limited partner's fair market value capital account. This makes sense when you realize that a limited partner's limited liability shields the limited partner from catastrophic losses such as this. The limited partner can only lose his or her capital invested in the partnership and nothing more. Therefore, we won't allocate this catastrophic loss to the limited partner beyond the limited partner's amount at risk, which is represented by the limited partner's fair market value capital account. So, even though the limited partner has a 50% loss sharing ratio, the limited partner can only be allocated a maximum of $20,000 of the loss. The rest of the loss, $110,000, must be allocated to the general partners. The general partners each have a 25% loss ratio, so their relative proportion of the loss is 50% each. That is why you see 1/2 of the remaining hypothetical loss, or $55,000, allocated to each of the general partners. After the loss allocations, what are the fair market value capital accounts? As we expected, the limited partner has a zero fair market value capital account. This partner has lost his $20,000 investment and just walks away. The two general partners, however, have negative capital accounts. Under the substantial economic effect rules, when a partnership dissolves and a general partner has a negative fair market value capital account, that partner is responsible for restoring the capital account to zero. This means the general partner must contribute cash or property to the partnership to the extent needed to bring the fair market value capital account back up to zero. This is where the money comes from to pay the recourse liabilities. In our example, Yuehua must pay the partnership $35,000 to restore the negative capital account to zero. Liang Yen must pay the partnership $25,000 to restore the negative capital account to zero. The partnership will now have $60,000 cash, which will be used to pay the $60,000 recourse debt. This is how we estimate the economic risk to each partner related to the $60,000 recourse debt. In real life, it may not work out this way, but this is the method the Treasury regulations tell us to allocate recourse liabilities in a partnership as a reasonable estimate. This also demonstrates why we can't simply multiply recourse liabilities by the general partner's loss-sharing ratios to allocate recourse liabilities. Sometimes we would get the same answer as the constructive liquidation scenario, but sometimes we wouldn't. The only way to know for sure is to do the math required by the Treasury regulations. Finally, let's use these allocations as they were intended to calculate each partner's tax basis in the partnership interest. Now we shift from using the fair market value balance sheet to using the tax basis balance sheet. Assuming that the tax basis capital accounts reflect each partner's net capital invested into the partnership on a tax basis, we can add the tax basis capital account to that partner's share of recourse liabilities. This will give us the partner's tax basis in the partnership interest. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send me an email. If you like this video and would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.